that. So that's fantastic. So you go back to, so you're in Moscow now, then you go back to the East Coast. And then after the East Coast, you go back to Mexico?
No, I'll be back in Mexico probably just before Christmas, and then we'll be there till the 1st of March. So all of January I'll be there, and then February is our retreat month. We do a 21-day deep dive reboot camp there. And in between, I've still got another half a dozen or more countries to get to. So I'm about halfway through my 2019 tour at the moment.
Dan, what do you do to rejuvenate? That's my question.
Well, I practice what I preach.
That's a good thing.
I learned to relax in motion. I use the breath to never go too far off from the source of energy and inspiration. Keep returning and touching on that place. And I can get from a few breaths what most people, it would take them a few days laying on the beach in the Bahamas to get. And so over the years, I've learned how to really release a lot of fatigue and do some detoxing really deeply, really quickly with the breath, re-energizing, recentering. So I'm walking my talk, and I live in a suitcase. I do all my shopping at airports. I'm in a different time zone every week, and this has been happening for well over 30 years now. So I guess certain things that other people struggle with that just become easy somehow, and we take advantage of that ease and that flow to try to get as much done as we can with the time we have, and serve as much as we can, and heal as much as we can, and share as much as we can. So as long as I'm getting invitations, I'm showing up.
Good. Fantastic. That's great. Okay, well, we're going to start off this webinar now with everybody. I wanted to just say hi to everybody. My name is Paul Aryeh, and Dan Brule here, and we have a lot of commonalities in our mission. We're out there to help people and rejuvenate people that we come in contact. I guess you can call us healers of some sort, but we're really masters in our field of helping people reboot and regenerate and go back to source. And Dan's methodology is a master breathworks instructor, and Dan has centers around the world. In fact, right now he's in Moscow after a short stint in Lithuania, which is probably a really beautiful place where you've instructed dozens of people in your methodology of breath work to have them essentially go back to source. Is it true, Dan? Through the breath, the power of the breath, to go back to the source of that soul essence?
Yeah, the breath is a thread. And if we follow that thread, it takes us to its source. The source of the breath is the source of us. It's the headwaters of our life stream, And so, yes, by reconnecting with our breath, we're reconnecting with our spirit, with our source, with our essence, with our center, with our higher self, or whatever you want to call it, the Godhead within. And I love breath work because even for people who don't consider themselves to be spiritual, breathing gives people a biological experience of God, a cellular experience of divine energy. So it takes it away from the intellectual, philosophical realm, and it brings it right into your body where you can't help but feel it. And so, yeah, I think that's the highest application of breath, really, to, to connect or reconnect with our spirit and to begin to live from the energy and the qualities of our source, of our essence.
Right. So breath work is the means by which you go back to the source of that breath.
Exactly, exactly. And on the way, we work through all the obstacles and the blocks and the shocks and the traumas that separated ourselves from a naturally ecstatic state that caused us to put up walls around our heart, that impressed us with a fear of life or a fear of our own power or a fear of others or a fear of the unknown. And so breathing just helps to just wash all that stuff out of our system so we can return to who we really are and live from there and make a difference in the world. You know, for every person who wakes up, it makes it easier for everyone else to wake up. And for every person who finds genuine peace, it awakens in other people quite naturally. And so the breath connects us. And it's not just a pretty spiritual idea, but the breath literally connects us. It connects the mind to the body. It connects us to each other. And it connects us to our source. So it's a shortcut. In many ways, breathing is a real shortcut.
Right. And that's where the transformation is, because we forget who we are and our source. And when we start creating an awareness of our breath and the power behind the breath, and that everything in the healing modalities is so natural.
Yeah.
I mean, same with the healing work that I do. It's kind of like the breath is one of the 5 elements, but is one of the most profound vehicles for transformation. You know, with a lot of clients that I work with, the first thing I ask them when we sit down, I observe how they're breathing. And I ask a simple question. I said, "Are you breathing?" And then they kind of go into a little bit of like a shock, like, wow, I mean, I didn't even know where that came from. And I said, well, take a minute here, because you're generally, you know, people are so wound up in their traumatic, formatted mindset that it impacts our breath. And, you know, before you can even start the healing process, before you can even start any type of inner work, there has to be an awareness before to recognize how important the breath is.
Yeah, we get in touch with the breath. We're getting in touch with ourselves. And breathing patterns are like fingerprints. They're unique to everyone. And in each moment, our breathing pattern is expressing and reflecting our true state.
Right.
And so every emotional state, every psychological state, every physiological state has a corresponding or an associated breathing pattern or quality. And when our emotional state changes, our breathing pattern changes. And it's a two-way street. So we learn that by regulating our breath, by breathing in certain ways, we can trigger certain states. We can awaken certain abilities. And so it's very empowering. And it's the first place to start. It is the first thing that happens when we're born, the last thing that happens before we pass. And in between, it's with us for the entire way. So it pays to develop a really intimate relationship with our breath. And in so doing, we awaken to all of our habits and patterns, behaviors, emotions, postures, our heart's grandest desire, our programming, our conditioning. So I think breathing is the tool of our day. It's the next major key skill set that humans need to take the next step in our evolution.
Yeah, I saw your video on breath is the new yoga. It was a great interview. I really enjoyed watching that. And it was really, the consciousness movement is a very holistic movement. You know, there are a lot of different components to it. And it's about going back to source and what are the tools that we're going to use to go back to source. Some people use mantras, some people use yantra, some people use tantra, some people use, and breath work has been what, the last 30 years? I mean, people didn't even know about that before breathworks. You know, it's like uh, one of the interesting modalities was rebirthing, and it's all these. From my experience, as a healer, is that it's about removing the patterns. And the patterns are the traumas and the mindset and the thoughts and the belief systems that one part, we come in with it, but another part, like what Joe Dispenza says, he says, within the first 7 years of life, all your experiences have determined your patterns by which you live by. And then after a certain age, you go ahead and just reinforce those patterns, those beliefs, those thoughts. So the question in our day, in our experience, is we can get back to source by reconditioning ourselves, releasing those traumas. I mean, really, that's what the healing modalities are about, is releasing those blockages, releasing those, let the thought bring you back to the emotion that brings you back to that experience in life that we can go back to, and then breathe your way through those experiences and releasing.
Yeah.
Because it's when you release, you're releasing the false impression. You're releasing the false vibration. You're releasing the concept or the belief or the thought or the emotion that we associate with us, which we interact with the world through that filter.
Right. Yeah, if we remember, for the first few years of our life, we're basically in a hypnotic trance. Everything is downloaded directly into our subconscious. And we are, in the first few years of our life, we're given programs that limit who we are. And by the time we begin to think for ourselves, we're already thinking with thoughts that were put into us. We're already shaping and molding ourselves according to someone else's beliefs or fears or desires. And we can lose touch with our purpose, why we came here. What's our path? What's our mission? And so breathing reawakens that.
So Dan, let me ask you a question. When did you first realize what was your first experience, or how did you really recognize, wow, I've got this gift, I've got this talent, that embarked you into this journey 30 years ago?
Yeah, well, actually, I was the kid that was having breath holding competitions in the schoolyard in kindergarten. We were hyperventilating and then squeezing each other and feeling dizzy. And it's always been a fascination for me. And every job I've ever had has been connected to the breath in some way. I tried escaping, I tried doing other things, and the spirit of the breath just kept grabbing me by the scruff of my neck and putting me back on my path until, I'm fortunate, I'm blessed, I have no doubt about, why I'm here and what my contribution is. And so, yeah, it's been kind of a gradual acknowledging of what it already is, maybe. I never made a conscious decision. There were points in my life where I realized, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and let's go for it. Um, and so, you know, it's a calling, it's an obsession. And, uh, and so as students, we just keep digging, we keep seeing what's the maximum potential, what else is there to learn. And so, you know, my gift, I guess, is this ability to get outside the box, to be irreverent, you know, game-changing kind of non-traditional uh, tendencies. And I love being in new places. I love trying new things. I like to be ahead of the curve. And so I just made it my life to, if there was ever anyone who knew anything about breathing, I was either kissing their feet or breathing down their neck until I got everything I could, or they kicked me out, or I moved on to the next flower and drew some more pollen, some more nectar, and all this was forming in my own process. And so, you know, you make an organic kind of natural transition from student to teacher. And we're always both. You know, there's always someone above us on the ladder, and there's always someone below us, and we're pushing each other up and pulling each other up, and we're all heading to the same place in our own way. But I think breathing is a way to accelerate each of our paths.
Dan, what's the difference between pranayama, you know, which is a very ancient yogic technique? I mean, I know that they breathe in through the right and then exhale through the left. Why is that? And what's the difference, you know, between the classical Vedic technique and your technique, and what's the difference? Because I see there's so much out there, and
so many schools and styles, ancient methods. You know, prana yoga is a good example of a very ancient traditional method. And you know, the original yogis began to practice pranayama as a way to regulate their mind. They realized that by calming their mind, the breath, their mind calmed. They realized that by regulating their breath, they could regulate their mental operations. They could regulate their emotions. They could regulate their chemistry. So breathing became a central leg, or, you know, arm, branch in the yogic tradition. So I think what I would am doing is an American style of prana yoga, a contemporary hit on the ancient practices. I mean, we're living in a different world than 2,000-3,000 years ago when these practices were developed, and we've grown, and we need new techniques, new practices. We need to evolve the process. So I was a traditional prana yogi. My teacher, Swami Rama, at the Himalayan Institute in Pennsylvania, was one of my inspirations. And Rama Sharaka, you know, turn of the century Westerner, who one of the first Western yogis, was my early teacher through his work. And because of modern technology and modern science, we can actually begin to glean from the prana yoga techniques the stuff that works. You know, remove the rituals, remove the dogma, remove the packaging that some people aren't comfortable with. You know, we're Westerners, we have a Western mind, and the whole guru worship and deeds and, you know, that's a little too much for people. Right. But the techniques, the spiritual technologies that are being applied, if we can, so that's what I tried to do. I've tried to extract from these traditional Kundalini yoga tradition and prana yoga tradition and Kriya yoga, you know, what are the practical exercises and techniques, and what's the essence of those teachings, and try to transmit that. And so each person, in a way, we have to find our own path. You know, I'm fond of saying that if we're walking someone else's path, we're walking the wrong path. And it doesn't matter how great the person was who created the path, and it doesn't matter how many millions of other people believe it's the right path. We each have our own path, and it takes a certain kind of courage to walk our own path in this world. And so if we're not connected to our source, to a center of power in ourselves, a source of inspiration, we're going to follow others. But, you know, maybe one of my teachers, Leonard Orr, you mentioned rebirthing, he's the father of rebirthing. He once said, everybody is following somebody, but maybe the person you're following is following you. So maybe what we ought to do is stop following and start leading.
Right.
And we all have gifts, and that's, we lead by sharing those gifts, unique gifts that we're given. And we is smarter than me. So when people come together and they share their gifts, everybody is uplifted. So.
Right, right. I think that's really true. And I think that's part of the paradigm that's evolving in this consciousness movement, is that collaboration has been at the forefront of sharing, and in that sharing, knowledge is coming forth. I mean, there's a beautiful dynamic that happens within a group setting that I found through the seminars that I've done, is that when even in the air element of a Zoom video call, that we can actually be connected on a consciousness level.
Yeah.
And that consciousness level is so powerful for personal transformation, that someone could share something 5,000 miles away and it could touch me, and it could really open something up within me that makes a shift or a transformation. But it's the collective consciousness that I think is at the forefront, that we're really discovering in this consciousness movement type of thing. You know, that's why I reached out to you, Dan, because I saw there was a quality, in today's day and age, it's us versus them mentality that says, okay, we'll keep them at a distance, and not noticing that people have different qualities of understanding and wisdom and contribution, that we shouldn't be afraid, so to speak. Yeah. Because that's the real ego. The ego has fear, competition. Okay, that guy is going to, he's my competition. It's all about the numbers. It's all about the Facebook likes. It's all about how many people I can accumulate and stuff like that, which I think is a really backwards mentality. Yeah. And I'm going to take a moment here just to breathe, just to say, that we're creators. And we're creating a different shift. And that was really part of my intention to say, to reach out to you, Dan, because I saw that you had a consciousness which was evolved.
Well, and that's also why I really, I really resonated when I looked over what you're doing. And I'm curious too, about your journey till now. And, how did you were you slapped or shaken and shocked onto the spiritual path? You just wake up there one day? And what about the techniques and the methods of healing and transformation that you offer? I'd really love to know more about your personal journey and what you've been offering till now.
Yeah. So, all the above, I was shaken, slapped, pulled, prodded, everything like that, I guess, I started the spiritual path when I was in high school and college. I met Muktananda, which was my first guru that I really got exposed to. And I was so enamored that I just followed the spiritual path for many years. And then in 1998, I went to India because I met this very young saint, Sri Kaleshwar. And so I went to India and witnessed many miracles. I mean, miracles in the sense like, you know, where do I begin? It's kind of like you witness angels, you have a darshan of Mother Divine, you know, you connect to the physical form of Jesus, whatever it is, and you know, or watching a dead bird come back to life. You know, all these miracles were designed to really break my belief system about what spirituality was really all about. So I spent 14 years actually living in India and learning all these ancient techniques and mantras and yantras and healing modalities that really just transformed my awareness. I mean, it was really like my awareness just kind of popped out. You know, I began to recognize that there's more to life on the spiritual path, and that I had a gift or a calling, you know, and healing was part of it, you know, because really deep down inside, you want to share your experiences to inspire other people so that their journey reveals themselves. So the healing modality, you know, revolve around the five elements. And the five elements, you know, the air element, that's why I was really so curious about the breath work, because I knew how important that the breath work was to healing. Of course, you have the earth element, you know, you have the nature, you have fire, you have water. All those have different components in the healing modality. So when I work with students and I work with clients, it's about bringing that balance back and purifying. You know, the spiritual path is so much about purification.
Yeah. And the breath is fire. I mean, the breath really burns through a lot of our, you know, shocks and traumas and residues of shocks and traumas and energetic blocks. I mean, it burns through a lot of those barriers.
Right.
And it's in the Bible, you know, the breath is symbolized by fire in several. Swami Rama's book was called The Path of Fire and Light, Prana Yoga. So, yeah, the breath is this spiritual purification tool that nature has given us.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, you know, we've gotten behind, and it's a lot harder to catch up than it is to keep up. And it seems like the further people get behind, the harder it is for them to motivate themselves to come back and get back. And so that extra energy we need to make the changes that we know we want to make, we get that energy and inspiration from the breath.
Yeah. What's really amazing, Dan, is that there's so much energy and vibrations that are contained within the air around us. You know, I was so amazed when I heard Tesla. He said there's more energy within the ether and the air around us that we don't need, you know, gasoline. We don't need, you know, all this combustible thing. We can, if we can tap into it.
Yeah.
Because there's an energy of consciousness within the breath. I think that's really it, because it's not a passive thing. You know, that's the shift in consciousness that I got, was that the breath is not an unconscious passive. I use the word passive because we take it for granted. But if we recognize the power or the energy or the vitality contained within the air around us, why do we feel really great when we're out of Los Angeles or we're out of the inner cities and we go into nature? We feel vitalized because the air is so enlivened with that life force.
Yeah. And that's the real art. I mean, I think that the high art of breath work is learning to breathe energy and not just air. To, you know, how to extract that life force
Right,
from
right.
air. We have to be available somehow. There's something in us needs to be soft, needs to be open, needs to be awake, needs to be conscious. And so we assume a certain attitude or state or internal posture, energetic posture. And in so doing, these abilities in us, you know, light up. I've been using the analogy of the, the thing called magic eye, these photographs, prints, and it's just random geometric shapes. But if you focus your eyes in front or behind the picture, if you do something with your vision, this 3D image pops up. It's there. But if you look at it in the normal way you look at things, you won't see that 3D image. You have to deliberately focus your eyes in a different way, and then you catch this 3D image. Breathing is the same thing. We're using the breath to create a different way of contacting our feelings, a different way of feeling and adjusting in the way that we sense and feel and monitor our internal processes. And when you make that certain kind of adjustment in your feeling, then things open up in us, things emerge. We access certain things that are there all the time, but we just haven't been able to catch them because we were looking in our habitual way. So as soon as we begin to change the way that we relate to the breath, the way we relate to the feelings and sensations and our reactions, then in that work, abilities emerge, let's say. It's a byproduct, because the last thing we want to do is turn this into one more egoic struggle, you know?
Yeah.
And so as soon as people start efforting, as soon as they start struggling, as soon as they're kind of goal-oriented, you know, it's easy to get out of the flow when you start falling into those traditional or habitual patterns. So to stay connected to the breath, to keep relaxing, to keep our awareness heightened and detailed, and then we begin to catch things that we could never catch before. And it's beautiful to be with people when they make these discoveries, when they have these breakthroughs. It's like, my God, how grateful can we be just to be able to be doing this kind of work? You know, like, wow. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, I was thinking about a couple of examples, and I actually wanted to ask you, when you come across someone who is asthmatic, you know, that's a direct impediment,
Breathing disorder.
breathing disorder.
Yeah.
What is your experience of, what's the cause of those breathing disorders, and how do you work to release those? I guess it's a trauma, you know, that's my only guess. I've seen kids around 7 or 8 years old, you know, all of a sudden they develop asthma. Is it a result of being in Los Angeles with all the smog that's part of it? Or is there something deeper that is going on?
Yeah. You know, it's all the above, and everyone, you know, it's unfortunate that we have a label and then millions of people are put on that label, because each person is a little bit unique and it could be a different experience for each person. But generally, asthma, I love, there's a guy, Buteyko, a Russian Buteyko, passed away, but his idea about asthma was that it wasn't a disease at all. It was the body trying to preserve carbon dioxide. And so in asthma, the bronchial passages constrict, they're contracted, they close off. And this creates this feeling of panic and air hunger. And so then a person with asthma will turn to a steroid, and these very powerful steroids will dilate everything again. But there are natural ways of producing the dilation of the bronchial vessels. We have to do emotional work. We have to do self-talk, psychological work, and you do breathing exercises. So when I work with people with asthma, I try to approach each person as if it's the first time. Like, I mean, yeah, I know a lot of things. I've worked with a lot of people with asthma, and all that stuff is waiting for me to tap to use. But I really try to enter each experience and see if there isn't something totally unique that can be revealed. But in general, there are always patterns. And so there are good general ways to approach asthma, no matter what the cause or no matter what the complications in it. One of them is practicing breath awareness, to become more mindful of how you breathe. Do you breathe through your nose or through your mouth? And when? When did you unconsciously switch? What muscles are you using to breathe? You know, people with asthmatic conditions tend to use a lot of accessory muscles, and it actually makes breathing even more difficult. And the harder they try, the more jammed up they get. And the more jammed up they get, the more in a panic they are. And the more in a panic they are, the harder they try, and it's a vicious cycle. So I teach people first, practice nose breathing, practice diaphragmatic breathing, slow the breathing down, pace your breathing, extend the exhales, get comfortable with a pause after the exhale, so you're not rushing into the next inhale, not gasping for breath. It's retraining. Most people with asthma have habits, breathing habits, that are actually causing or definitely making the condition worse.
Right.
So we retrain remedial breathing, you know, focusing on the exhale, using relaxation, getting comfortable, gradually exposing yourself to the symptoms of air hunger, and gently and gradually over a few days or weeks or a couple months, getting more and more comfortable with those symptoms of air hunger until you can relax in moments when you couldn't relax. And carbon dioxide is a vasodilator. So if we can tolerate higher levels of CO2 in our system, the CO2 reaches a certain level and it creates all that dilation that these chemical steroids do. So people can be liberated from a lot of those dangerous, you know, they come with a lot of side effects, you know. So, but I think, you know, asthma could be a symptom of what we call smother love, you know. Somebody just like smothered with, you know, it's like, okay, enough, give me some, I can't breathe already, you know. So there are emotional and psychological patterns that set people up for these things. And there are unconscious breathing habits, reactions, unconscious dysfunctional breathing patterns that become habitual and unconscious. So the first step is breath awareness. You have to be conscious of your breath, like a meditation, and then notice how you're breathing in different situations, and then get a handle on your breath, because when you get a handle on your breath, you get a handle on your mind, your body, your chemistry, your emotions. And so now you're in this point of power where you can change. You know, we have this ability to go from flip to flop. Doesn't matter what was true about me in this moment. In the next moment, everything's possible. Doesn't matter what's been true about me my whole life up till now. In this moment and going forward, anything is possible. So we need to do some work. If we want to heal asthma, we probably need to change some thoughts, some attitudes, become more conscious of emotional reactions. How do we deal with stress? And this is all self-awareness, right? So you begin with meditation and then gentle self-regulation. And you steer yourself away from dysfunctional habits and patterns and reactions, and you begin to plant seeds and you practice more resourceful, conscious responses to feelings and sensations and emotions and stress and pain and all the things that we're dealing with.
So really, it's about giving people the power of their breath. So that, for me, that means that you're moving from an unconscious breathing pattern Because, I mean, let's face it, everyone unconsciously breathes most of the time.
Yep.
That's just the way the world is.
We're breathing all the time, and we're only conscious of it a tiny little fraction of the time. Right.
Right. And it's only when we start meditating, I mean, really, that for me is the time where I actually turn within. When I'm turning within, I'm actually observing my breath. You know, I'm actually sending a message to my body by breathing deeply. I'm letting my body know, the cells know that it's okay to let go. It's okay to relax. It's okay to not be in fear. I mean, majority of people breathe shallow. Why? Because they're in constant fear.
Yeah.
And when you're in and it could be anything. It could be the conflict between you and your spouse. It could be because, you know, the tension and the pressures of work. It could be an interaction with a boss triggers an emotional chemical reaction in your brain. You know, the breath is a side effect of an unconscious mindset.
Yeah.
So by reversing, this has been my experience with breathing, is that when I actually take a hold of my patterns of breathing, I recondition my whole system. It affects my mental state. It affects my chemistry. It affects the chemicals that are released in the pituitary gland. It starts to change the whole vibrational frequency in my aura, you know, my energy. Because when I'm tense, it just happens to be that everybody around me becomes tense.
Yeah, and we're all connected. And yeah, I mean, it does start with consciousness. It does. Meditation, on developing meditative awareness, is the first and vital step in breath work and towards breath mastery. Because the more conscious I become of my breathing, the more conscious I become, period. The more aware I am of my breath, the more aware I am in general. Aware of my posture, aware of my reactions, aware of my words, aware of my emotions, aware of everything. So breath awareness, you know, develops into awareness of everything. More consciousness of breath means more consciousness in general. So that is definitely the first step. And hey, consciousness is one of the essential aspects of our nature. And expanding consciousness and deepening consciousness and awakening consciousness. I mean, we're in a consciousness movement, are we not? And you and I and many other people, thank God, are playing a part in this consciousness movement. And it's a global movement, but it's very personal. It's universal. But the only way to access this universal movement is through our own personal practice, our own personal gateway.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think breathing right now is, it's a major force in the planetary consciousness movement.
Yeah, because it's actually, I feel that when you're in control of your breath, you easily access your own inner consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah, when you're breathing consciously, you have a handle on your energy. And you have a handle on your awareness. And our consciousness and our energy, I mean, that's the most powerful part of us. If you can manage and direct your consciousness and your energy in a higher, you know, in a direction, upward direction, we uplift ourselves.
Right. And it's really amazing how the breath is so integral to setting the tone of our own personal vibrations.
Yeah.
And it's our personal vibrations. You know, I feel like the soul is already there. We just have a lot of stuff on it. Mm-hmm. And it's the breath that allows all that stuff to kind of be removed and to be released, to be decharged, to be, rejuvenating is a natural part of breathing deeply. But when you access the consciousness within the breath, that consciousness spreads to the places where we need to release that unconscious holding, whether it be an emotion or a trauma or it's the thought that leads to the belief that leads to some sort of traumatic experience that we can kind of release. And it's quite interesting because I'm sure, like when you work with women that are giving birth, you know how they say when a woman is giving birth, they say, okay, breathe, breathe. Why is that? Because that breath is going to be harmoniously working with the child that is coming into creation. If you're focusing just on the pain, but not focusing on the breath, it becomes a traumatic experience.
Yeah. Well, and the breath gives us a way to process energy, to deal with intensity. And when you keep the breath moving, you keep energy flowing.
Right.
So it doesn't build up, it doesn't get stuck. It's not turned around on itself. It can actually flow and clear. So yeah, breathing is used in childbirth. It's used in pain management. It's used to control panic and anxiety and fear and pain. It's a very powerful tool. It's a skill. So, it's like any skill. You got to learn it first, and then the more you practice, the more you can do. And I honestly feel and believe that there's no limit to what we're capable of. And if we are interested in our maximum potential, then we owe it to ourselves to dive into these ancient practices, which are coming in new, current, modern packages. And so, where a lot of people before us have found their way, and we're standing on the shoulders of the people before us. And when we have a sincere, heartfelt intent, the universe notices that, and we're supported. If we're doing the work we're supposed to be doing, we get all the energy that we need and more. So, and it's easy, it's not complicated. I'm really leery of complicated methods, it should be simple, and hey, what's simpler than just breathing, meditating, relaxing, and feeling, and just taking those things deeper, going deeper with them. Relaxation, for example, it's not a matter of being relaxed or not relaxed. There are levels of relaxation. How quickly can you relax? How deeply can you relax? How totally can you relax? In the middle of what situations can you relax? So, relaxation is another spiritual path, the path of surrender, the path of letting go. And so almost all of the practices around breath work are the application of spiritual principles, universal principles. Yin and yang, active, passive, circles and cycles. So we play rhythm. So we apply these universal patterns, universal laws and forces to the breathing, and we unlock universal potential.
Right. Wow, that's really, you just hit the nail on the head, because that's the future, the future of this movement. And we don't know how it came about. You can say that, okay, the Schumann resonance, over the last several years has gone from 9.5 to 12.2, like that, which also, it's a global phenomenon, because those vibrational frequencies affect the planet. It affects the consciousness. It affects the awareness, so to speak. And that's why people are inquiring. People are asking, okay, well, how can I change? Really, sometimes you get to a place where people are in such pain, they're forced to find a practitioner.
Well, desperation is a great motivator, right? So there's desperation and there's inspiration.
Right.
And I think, you know, if you hit bottom and you're desperate enough, you'll find the force or the power to make the change that you need to make. But on the other side of the spectrum, if we could have an extraordinary, ecstatic experience that cracks us open, it does the same work as desperation, but it's a lot nicer path, I think. So we have desperation, we have inspiration. They both work. Hey, let's take the path of inspiration. That's my philosophy.
That's really great. That's really great. All right. So your future is to go out and touch as many people's lives through the seminars and workshops that you're doing around the world.
Yeah, to keep honing my skills, to keep myself on the cutting edge of my own practice and growth and what else is possible. Refining the exercises and techniques that I've been working with over the years, finding new ways to explain or understand them, and doing whatever I can to awaken people to, you know, who we are, who we really are, and why we're here, and what's possible. How much love can we generate? How much ecstasy can we tolerate? How much compassion can we hold? And, you know, I think people who are genuinely on a spiritual path, who are genuinely listening to their heart and they're forming heartfelt intentions, the breath comes to them. The breath finds them. And maybe the breath finds them in the form of Dan Brule. Maybe it finds them in a book. Who knows? But the spirit of the breath is alive and it's intelligent, and it is recruiting us.
That's a really important point that I had a revelation about the breath, that there actually is an intelligence contained within the breath. I mean, it's more than just the life force. I mean, people ask, well, how do I get access to the Akashic records? Well, you know, I tell people, I says, well, what you're trying to do is you're trying to access, the word access. Through your intention, you're trying to access a higher source of knowledge when it's all around us. I mean, if you really take a look at it, the consciousness and the knowledge and the information can be accessed through the breath, because what you're doing when you're inhaling, you're receiving. And it's not just oxygen, Dan. I mean, this is I'm preaching to the choir here, but through my meditation practices, I've recognized the importance of, if you want to change your consciousness, if you want to receive knowledge, you want to see insight, inspiration, spirit, you have to be able to pull and to receive. And oftentimes it's through the breath, the breath of life. You hear that all the time in ancient scriptures, the breath of life. Well, why are they intertwining life with breath? Mm-hmm. It's not just because it sustains the body. I mean, that's just the gross level. Yeah. But it's the higher levels of life that I hear the angels speaking on that level, and that knowledge comes in. Yeah. That knowledge comes in.
Yeah, and we use the breath. I mean, I teach people to use the breath to consciously open and expand. That's an inhale. And so when we're breathing in, we are opening and expanding. And so if we hold the intention to open and expand our hearts, open and expand our consciousness while we are breathing, it happens. So my breathing mantra is open and expand, and feel the actual opening and expansion create it on the inhale so you don't have to imagine it. And then the exhale, you relax and let go. You know, a big part of moving forward on the spiritual path is awakening, expanding our consciousness, but it's also letting go of limitations of the past, of negative thoughts, of limiting beliefs, of grudges and resentment and old fears and old patterns and programs. So the letting go is a big part of this consciousness movement. So with every breath, we're practicing opening and expanding, taking in new energy, and letting go and relaxing and releasing old energy and limitations. So if you indulge in that consciously and continuously, you can accelerate your process, your evolution.
Right, right, right. Well, this is certainly an exciting time, that's for sure. And it's really, something has happened on the planet. There has been a real awakening. For sure, there's been a real awakening, and there's been a shift in consciousness. I mean, it's like, and it's the energy that really kind of said, go reach out to Dan. I mean, I went through your, you know, there was this symposium in Joshua Tree, and I looked through, it was a breathwork symposium, and I looked through the people, all the breathworks people. It's like, and all of a sudden I saw your face, and I said, I'm going to contact this guy, because there was just, you know, that consciousness, that energy, that guidance. Said, reach out to him. It would be a really great synergy of like-minded individuals. So I think this is a really exciting time, and I guess the Spirit has you activating on all continents and all different points in the globe. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm on 65 countries so far, and not slowing down yet. But you know, thanks to certain miracles, every now and then, well, like every day. I mean, I'm seeing miracles all the time, and I think if people aren't seeing miracles because they're just not looking. But once in a while, we get a down-to-earth, out of the book, mind-blowing, miraculous experience, and it motivates us, and it gives us juice to go another generation, you know, of work and practice. So I'm curious with you, like, what in your life, what are some of the great miracles that you've experienced? I know in India you mentioned a couple, but you know, like what kind of miracles have done that for you? Have caused you to say, "Yep, I'm on the right path, and this is what we should be doing"?
Yeah, it really comes back down to witness the transformation of people. You know, that's the biggest miracle. When you see someone who comes to you and they have a closed heart, you know, and then all of a sudden they release some pain, they release some old pattern, they release an unconscious tendency, and then they recognize this love inside themselves. It's not something imposed. It's like all of a sudden it's like this release. It's kind of like, then this energy comes up, and it's just, you see that there's a different way of existing. There's a different consciousness that's available to us. So that's the miracle. I mean, when you see people smile and you see that there's joy in their face, that's a miracle. I mean, we take for granted, you know, we want to see the miracles of walking on water. We want to see the miracles of, you know, healing this. But when people do it themselves and they see that they have the power within them to shift and transform their life, their lifestyle, that they have a choice. You know, if you see someone that they release the pain that is associated with anger, and all of a sudden, boom, you know, then it creates a space for, well, I don't have to be angry anymore. I can choose consciously not to be angry, because when I'm angry, my whole body becomes tense. I don't breathe. And it's just an uncomfortable way of living.
Yeah. Yeah, we can't get away with it. I mean, I don't have the luxury of negative thoughts and generating negative emotions. I'm the first one to be hurt by it, you know? And so someone once said, you know, anger is like, you know, poisoning yourself and expecting someone else to die, you know?
Yeah.
It's,
So
you know, it's old ways of reacting to life and dealing with the world. And hey, we're here to grow and find higher ways of expressing who we are, and it's beautiful. I love that. I mean, that is the miracle when people suddenly or gradually realize, wow, love is my nature. It feels good when I am being loving, and when I'm not, it hurts. And awakening to our own nature as love. I think, wow, yeah, that's a miracle for sure, isn't it?
yeah, because when you experience that love, there's so much peace that's there. There's so much, you know, when you start accessing it, then you start to see the contrast of the pain, and then you can start to work with that energy. It's like a bud, you know, that comes up when you start to see, like, wow, I do have love inside myself. I don't have to have the thought of feeling unworthy. I don't have to have the thought of having fear. I don't have to have the live in a cage, because we all live in cages. It's about breaking free of that. And that's what I love about the work you do, Sam, because the vehicle of breath work is opening and dismantling those patterns and tendencies that we came in with. And that's the transformation, because you go from one state of consciousness using the breath in a conscious, intentioned way. I mean, I love how you say it. It's like it's your intention behind the breath with the result that you want to create. You know, it's you breathing in deep, like I'm consciously opening my heart through deep breathing, you know, as a technique of releasing, because when you bring in the positive, it's going to accentuate the negative, and then you release it. Like you said, that's the work. It's releasing out those patterns, releasing out those beliefs that we have, and then creating a different shift in consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, so much of our blocks and our negative beliefs are unconscious. And we can't get to them through our thinking mind. But the breath, we get under that stuff with the breath. And we can, it's like that game you play with dominoes, you know, you stand them all up, you knock one over and brrr, they all fall. So the breath can take us to our deepest fear, our biggest block, and remove it. And then a whole lot of stuff just falls by its own weight. It's very pure, it's very powerful. And it might be even a little too rapid and powerful. Some people are afraid that it can be extremely powerful. And some people are afraid of that power. You know, we'd like to change, but then when it actually starts happening, it's like a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. You know, everything in that caterpillar is turning to mush. And if that caterpillar had a human mind, it would call a doctor. It would try to stop the process, like, help, fix me, stop what's happening. So transformation is frightening to the ego, and the system resists it by itself naturally. So we have to have a gentle yet powerful way to induce and support transformation. And the quality of our breath, you know, is the quality of our thoughts. The quality of our breath is the quality of our emotions, and vice versa. So we can hack into that whole realm of the unconscious through the breath, and we can make deep, permanent changes. And it's natural, and it's almost like cheating, because it's so easy and quick.
God forbid if we kept it simple and easy, you know?
I know. What, it's not expensive, It's not going to take forever. It's not complicated. How good can it be? Yeah, that's our Western mind.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So we ran a little bit over the 1 hour mark. So if it's okay with you, Dan, we can just kind of wrap it up. I just wanted to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and share and be with us and to share your wisdom and your consciousness and your insights. It's really inspiration. I support you from here in Los Angeles, California, wherever you are, that you help and touch and open the hearts of all the people that are in your realm of being, and that you continue the work with great speed and power.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, we need to be doing this work. I mean, we live in a world where we just found out in the last 2 days, in less than a minute, you can kill 20 people.
Yeah.
And so if we can do that, we can uplift 20 people. We can awaken 20 people. We can give life to 20 people.
Right.
So we just need to clear away our fears and our limitations and do the work that we're here to do, which is to be loving and expanding. So thank you for the invitation. Thank you for this conversation.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much. And anyone who wants to, I'll create a small video and then put your, breathmastery.com.
Yep.
Right. And
Instagram is the Dan Brule Official. At Dan Brule Official is my Instagram, and Breath Mastery is the website. And
right.
On Facebook, I'm easy to find on Facebook too, Dan Brule Breath Mastery.
Right. And I'll put all my information on there as well. And we can just kind of keep the collaboration going on, Dan. That's how we develop unity and, spread that consciousness amongst different platforms.
Love you, brother. And okay. I hope I'll see you in LA when I pass through in December.
Definitely you will. No doubt. No doubt. Okay. God bless everybody. Thank you for attending. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you again, and hopefully it will be an ongoing series.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been amazing to listen to you. It's already a shift of energy here. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
God bless.